Bula Vinaka, and a very good afternoon to you all. I can honestly say on behalf of every Fijian in this room that this has been one of the greatest weeks in our nation's history. Thank you. The honor of joining our great friends from Sweden in co-chairing the World Ocean Conference, and to witness the strong commitment of the community of nations to support us in our crusade to protect our oceans and seas. We came here playing a role far more ambitious than a nation of our size can expect to play under normal circumstances. But as we all know, these aren't normal circumstances. Our oceans and seas are under unprecedented threat. And I want to thank the world for giving a small island developing state such a big voice as co-chair of this conference to amplify our collective concerns and to begin rolling back the tide of neglect and willful destruction that has placed our oceans and seas in such dire peril. We were determined to inject these proceedings with the Fijian spirit and the warmth of our islands through the performances of our musicians, our singers, and our dancers. They have done Fiji proud. And I know, because many of you have told me so, that they have made this conference a unique event in the history of the United Nations. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for your own warm response at the opening ceremony when you expressed your personal appreciation and respect for Fijian culture. The entire room was impressed as you fulfilled your own obligation to down a large billow of kava in one hit. There's a lot more kava waiting for you in Fiji when you come to visit us, which we very much hope that you will do before too long. Just as I invite every single one of you in this great auditorium to come to Fiji with your families to experience our very special brand of hospitality. I want to place on record our deepest appreciation to the President of the General Assembly and all UN staff for the great effort you have made to make us all feel welcome and make this conference a success. My special thanks to my distinguished co-chair, the Deputy Prime Minister of Sweden, for a wonderful collaboration this week. We might come from opposite ends of the earth, but we share the same commitment, and I think we made a great team. Certainly it has brought Sweden and Fiji and the rest of the Pacific nations closer together, just as our close collaboration with Germany on COP23 is building bridges across the world between Germans and Pacific Islanders. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, there is no question that we have made great strides this week in drawing global attention to the urgent need for action on our oceans and seas. And this is reflected in the large number of formal commitments that have been made, which have now reached more than 1,110 and rising. And this is almost double the number at the start of the week, and I understand it is still rising. And it is a clear indication of the outpouring of support for decisive action that this conference has generated. I want to warmly thank those governments, non-government organizations, UN agencies, and the private sector for joining us with these undertakings to help improve the state of our oceans. The largest number of commitments have come from governments at 44%, NGOs 19%, UN entities at 9%, and the private sector 6%. The North Atlantic is the ocean basin with the most commitments so far, 286, followed by my own region, the South Pacific, with 220. Across the targets, marine ecosystems have the most commitments with 517, followed by pollution with 402, and scientific knowledge and research with 397. Even after the conference closes, the register will remain open, so I urge the world to keep those commitments coming in. Whether you are a small NGO or a large country, every commitment matters, because in the sum total is the key to substantially improving the state of our oceans and implementing SDG 14. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm particularly encouraged by the outcome of the sixth partnership dialogue that produced all sorts of innovative solutions, and I think we can all agree, seven partnership dialogues, we can all agree was an unqualified success. It underlined the critical importance of a partnership of governments, civil society, the scientific and academic communities, and the private sector all working together on a holistic approach to our oceans, which, as we all know, is the only way to effectively deal with this crisis, along with the support of all 7.5 billion on Earth. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, I again thank those that made this gathering possible, the President of the General Assembly, the UN Secretary General, the Secretary General of the Conference, and the co-facilitator of the call for action. And Vinakapagalebu, that's Fijian for thank you very much to all of you for making this such a successful and memorable gathering. The entire world taking a stand in defense of our oceans and seas. Vinakapagalebu, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we close the Oceans Conference with the call of the ocean, the call of the conch shell, I would request all Swedish, Fijian, and our Pacific Island delegates to come to the podium to regale the conference participants with the Fiji, dare I say, Pacific farewell song. So as the band of the Republic of Fiji Military Forces enters, I would therefore like to call on the delegates of the conference, the co-presidents, and our Pacific Islands brothers and sisters, and specifically for the President of the General Assembly, to come and join us in the podium in singing of the farewell song. It is a beautifully sad but urban myth has sprung up around this song that it's still worth hearing. The story goes that a young man named Thomas wrote Isalei in the late 1900s for the love of his life, a woman named Isa. Isa was born to a high family, and as such, she and Thomas were forbidden to be married. He wrote the song for her as his farewell, asking her to remember him, though they would never be able to spend their life together. Please, ladies and gentlemen, Isale is an expression of many, many meanings. It expresses sadness, despair, anguish, lonesomeness, including regrets of missed opportunities and the longing of separated loved ones and the absent or departing friends. So as we close off the Oceans Conference and prepare to depart Turtle Bay, we are reminded of French poet Harcourt's immortal words translated, "To part is to die a little." So as we go our separate ways, we bid you Ma Salama, Zai Zheng, Au revoir, Dos Vidania, Adios, Goodbye, Adio, Ni Samamod.